thing I want you to say word for word. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki, and I'm here to tell you about how I learned Spanish. Go.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Niki y yo estoy aquí para decirles a todos cómo yo aprendí español.
And I am Black American.
Y yo soy afroamericana.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the African Dominican Show. It's your girl Valentina, nicknamed the African Dominican. And on today's show or video or whatever you want to call it, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Nikki, and she has very strong Dominican connections. She's African American, but I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nikki. My government name, however, is Tia Nicole, and I'm an author. I also have a YouTube channel, and I'm also on the Dominican Route channel as well as a co-host. So my roots and my connection with Dominican culture is that I've been speaking Dominican Spanish now for, I guess, technically 15 years. And I've been traveling back and forth to DR now for over a year. And I'm headed back and I plan to be there for quite some time. You could say indefinitely, but I'll be back to the States at least before 8 months have passed or so.
Okay, no, that's wonderful. And I've noticed that you have Tia Nicole. Tia in Spanish means auntie. Is that your how
Correct.
you like to be called, Auntie Nicole?
No, so that's what's funny. That is why I go by Nikki because when I first started learning Spanish, I got that joke all the time. People would say, "Oh, you're like my auntie," and I'm like, "You know what? Nope, Nikki. Just call me Nikki."
Okay, Nikki, we'll call you Nikki on this show. And Nikki, I know you mentioned that you speak Spanish fluently, Dominican Spanish, and I'm so glad you made that clear because guys, there's a difference between Dominican Spanish and regular Spanish. Because I have some Spanish friends who speak Spanish all their lives, but when they speak to Dominicans, they're always like, "Oh my gosh, I don't understand what he's saying. Is that Spanish?" But it is Spanish. Dominicans speak Spanish a little bit differently. So please tell us a little bit more about that.
So yeah, when I first started learning Spanish, I realized that I could not learn Spanish from all countries. I had to kind of make a decision as to which type of Spanish I wanted to learn. And I noticed that initially I was learning Mexican Spanish. And so I got a lot of looks and I got a lot of like, what is that about? And so I was like, I met a guy. He happened to be Dominican. And when we were dating, he told me that I didn't have any other choice but to speak Dominican Spanish. And so that's how I started learning Dominican Spanish. And it really worked for me because after that, it was not such a big surprise whenever I spoke Spanish. It was kind of like they just took it because, I'm brown. So they didn't know if I was Panamanian, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, and a lot of times I do get that between Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Cuban. Now, when I hang out with Cubans, my accent does get a little more Cuban, and the same for when I hang out with Puerto Ricans too. So it kind of fluctuates, but nonetheless, it's all Caribbean Spanish.
Okay, now that's thanks for clarifying that. So let me ask you. So when you speak to Dominicans in Spanish versus Mexicans, do you have to also adjust your words or just the accent?
I adjust some of the words. I taught middle school ESL, and a lot of my students were Honduran. And I would say to them, like, go get your book bag, but I would use the word bulto. I'd say, déjame tu bulto. And they'd be like, mi bulto? You mean my mochila? And I'm like, yeah, your mochila. That's fine too, But after that, they started kind of saying bulto also, making fun of me, but it's a lot of fun. So I do say things to some of my friends just being funny, like Simon. I say that with some of my Mexican friends and stuff like that. But it's just me being silly. But if I'm having a general conversation, I I typically keep it with Dominican Spanish.
Okay. Is that your preferred Spanish, Dominican Spanish?
Absolutely. I love the way it sounds. It's just so sexy to me. I mean, yeah, I've always loved listening to Dominican men speak Spanish to me. So yes, absolutely. It's my favorite.
Okay, no, that's great to know. And speaking of which, so you are obviously African American, meaning you are Black American, born and raised, right?
Yes, so I did do my DNA. So I'm 73% African, which is majority Nigerian, and I think Ghana, I think. And then I'm 23% or 24% European, and then 1% Native American.
Okay.
And yes, I'm a Black woman.
Just to repeat, she's 73% African American. She's no, she's 73% African, and then she has other mixes. So she's majority African. So she's a Black American, African American. Okay, now that's great to know. So, what
Yes.
motivated an African American woman like you to learn Spanish?
So I was about 26 years old working at a cell phone store, and it was in a predominantly Hispanic area. And I was getting so frustrated because I kept getting ignored. And I knew that I was a good salesperson. And I was like, what is happening? And I realized it was because I didn't speak the language. So I had a lot of customers just come in and say, "You speak Spanish?" And I'd be like, "No." And then they would just walk off. And it pissed me off. And so I thought to myself, it's really rude to just walk off from someone and not just at least say thank you or gracias or something. And at that point, I started understanding and learning the differences in culture. And what I may think is rude, maybe they don't think that that's rude because in their culture or in their country, it's not. So that's kind of how that started. And so I went to my colleagues because I was one of the only Americans working there out of maybe three or four others, but everyone else, like seven or eight of my colleagues, they were Puerto Rican, Honduran, forgot the others, Mexican, and something else. And I just started asking them questions.
Mhm.
How do you say? And then I started writing it down on note cards. And so after I started writing it down on note cards, I started practicing with my customers. And in about 6 months, those same customers only came to visit with me because they were helping with my Spanish and also just in awe at the fact that we could now communicate. So that was a really, really cool moment for me because I learned that, Hispanic people are some of the most loving, accepting, kind people I've ever met in my life. So it changed for sure my perception of how I looked at immigrants. 100%.
That's very interesting. That's really, really commendable of you to learn Spanish like that. So, how long did it take you to learn Spanish, and what method did you use, or what method did you find more useful in learning Spanish?
So from day one, I just started just asking those questions with my colleagues. Then after that, I realized I've got to put myself in position to constantly hear it. And I know how I am. Like I get bored with things. So I was like, what can I do that's fun, a fun way for me to learn this? So I started watching novelas. And then sometimes I would listen to Spanish in my sleep. And in turn, it made me have Spanish dreams. And although there were some words and things that I was saying in my dreams that I didn't know, I somehow still understood it some of the time. And I think that really helped me out. And then I used Rosetta Stone, and I absolutely loved it because it teaches you in the same way that a parent teaches their child. As an example, on Rosetta Stone, you have a picture of like a little boy, and the voice El Niño, and it shows you the spelling and it says it. And then it will bring up a little girl and it'll say La Niña. And then you have to repeat it. And if it doesn't sound correct to the computer, you have to continue to say it until you get it right. And again, what I love about that is they don't translate it for you. They don't say La Niña, the girl, El Niño, the boy. So it's like you're forced to really figure it out, you know? And it's obvious as well. There's no question as to what it could be. You know it's a boy, you know it's a girl.
That's very interesting. And you guys, she mentioned la novelas. Those are like soap operas. Soap operas. How you say soap operas?
Soap operas, yeah.
Operas, right? So that's what she was watching. And then she did Rosetta Stone. And then you just practice with your customers. That's really, really amazing. And how long did
Yeah,
it
and I
take
was
you?
well, I'll tell you this, a couple of the other thing as well is I became friends with people who didn't speak any English at all. And so I was forced to really try to understand what was going on. And I went out to clubs, I went dancing all the time in my 20s. And so I would say it took me to feel comfortable actually like, hey, I'm going to speak to you in Spanish right now. Maybe about two years. And again, comfortably. But even before that, at 6 months, I would try with some people and I could tell that they were uncomfortable. And which is why, side note, even now when I speak to people, I'll try in English first. Even in my mind, I'm like, I know they don't speak English, just because like there's a look that I've noticed with people, and they look a little confused, a lot of the times. But I do give them an opportunity, and I'll say, hey, how can I help you? And they'll kind of look, and I'm like, ¿En qué le puedo ayudar? And they're like, oh, okay, mira, yo estoy buscando esta cosa, blah blah blah. So but I do like to give people the opportunity. And I've had them say to me, why did you speak to me in English? Like, why don't you just speak Spanish to me? And I explained to them because I want to give people an opportunity. And people have been offended a few times when I did that. And they were like, I speak English. And then I'll say, I was just trying to practice my Spanish. I didn't mean to offend you, that kind of a thing. But golly, in the past like 5 years, that hasn't really happened. And I think it's because my Spanish is so good that in their mind, they're thinking that I'm a native speaker and that I'm, possibly a Latina. So they don't get offended. They're just like, oh, she's my people, trying to help me out. So,
Wow, what a very interesting story on learning Spanish. Those of you at home who are trying to learn Spanish, take Nikki's tips, getting immersed in their culture, talking to the people. I'm trying to learn Spanish too, but I just need to make an extra effort. I've been around Dominican since 1996, so I have no excuse. I listen to
right.
bachata. I go to Dominican Republic a lot. Listen to bachata. I go to Dominican Republic a lot. But with me, it's like everybody around me almost speaks English. The only time I get forced to speak Spanish is when I go to Dominican Republic. And I'm not there for a long period of time. I'm there maybe for like a week, two, and I'm coming back to the United States where everybody speaks English to me. So I think I just need to go either to DR for 3 months and just be immersed in speaking Spanish nonstop, or make an extra effort in America to learn, which is hard because you get lazy. Like, oh my gosh, I just want to get this word out in English. I don't want to have to think, right?
Yes. And I would suggest you too, um, because I get your frustration. And when I moved back to Greensboro a year ago, that was one of my biggest concerns. I knew that I was going to be around my family all the time, and hardly anyone in my family speaks Spanish. They don't even live in this city or state, so it's not like they're someone who I'm interacting with often. So what I started doing was I always have my subtitles on, and they're always in Spanish, whether I'm watching something in English or in Spanish, because I'm learning subconsciously. Like I'm not even focusing on it, but the words are always there. So it's a way to constantly learn and not force it. And then the other thing is, well, over the year and a half, I did have a fiance and he didn't speak English. So I was every day speaking it with him, constantly texting and on phone calls. So that definitely helped me. But I know that for me, that honestly, that's why I don't date anyone who doesn't speak Spanish. Like I would never date a man who does not speak Spanish. I prefer to date a man who maybe speaks 25% English and 75% Spanish, because I don't ever want to forget my Spanish.
That's very, very interesting. And speaking of dating, we are going to get to that. I know probably some of you guys in the audience, you're like, oh my gosh, she dates Spanish men, she dates Dominican men. Yes, she dates Dominican men and Spanish men, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about this part first, okay? Okay, those of you at home, I know they cannot wait. They want to hear all about it. So, Nikki, um, if you have to give advice about learning Spanish to people, what are the top three methods you suggest?
I would say definitely get an app of some sort um, on your phone. And anytime that you've got some downtime and you're bored, I would say, get on there and, work away. But definitely something that makes it fun for you, something that makes you feel like you're not doing work. But also, it's nice to have something where you feel like, you're being rewarded as you're working on it. But let's see. So that's the first thing. So then the second thing, most definitely find those friends who speak Spanish. And you may have to go to YouTube, not YouTube. I'm sorry. You may have to go to meetups, things like that, or go to the club, go to a bar, go to Compare Foods, like go where you know that Spanish is primarily being spoken there. That would be one of the bigger things that I would say. And then thirdly, get to watching TV in Spanish, man. Telemundo. I can't think of the other shows or the other channels, but all of those channels, get on there and get to watching those movies and shows. The lyrics, that was a huge one for me. I used to, listen to the songs and I would print out the lyrics and sing along with it. That was actually really very helpful for me. I learned a lot of different little sayings through music.
Interesting. No, that's really, really great. I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you mentioned watching TV and listening to the music, like attentively listening, because like for myself, I've been listening to Dominican Latino music for over 25 years, but I'm a beat person. I don't hear the lyrics, I'm hearing the beat. So I'm guessing to that. So
Yeah,
I need to listen to the lyrics. And that's what I started doing recently. So that's a very good point. Thank you so much, Nikki. And now
absolutely.
I'm sure my audience wants you to prove yourself that you can really speak Spanish. All right. So this is what we're gonna do. Say
Okay.
something about me, nice, hopefully, and then say something about Dominican men, anything. It doesn't have to be nice, okay? And then translate that to English. Okay,
Okay.
go.
Or you could
Mhm.
just throw out some sentences yourself and then I just translate them. That way,
Okay, okay,
it's
okay.
even easier.
Let's see. Um. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. My name is Nikki. I am happy to be on this African Dominican channel. I love Dominican Republic. I love Dominican men. I love everybody. Stay tuned for more wonderful things from me, from you. Go.
Okay, let's see if I can remember all of that. Hola, yo soy Niki
Improvise.
y yo estoy
Improvise.
oh, okey, yo estoy aquí, yo estoy muy contenta, que yo estoy aquí con la African Dominican. También a mí me encanta la cultura dominicana, la gente, por supuesto. A mí me encantan los hombres, que son tan lindos y cariñosos. También quiero que ustedes pongan mucha atención para el futuro, porque ya yo tengo muchas cosas que vienen para ustedes.
Okay. I think you did great. You sounded like you did great. But one more
Thank you.
thing. One more thing I want you to say word for word. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki, and I'm here to tell you about how I learned Spanish. Go.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Niki y yo estoy aquí para decirles a todos cómo yo aprendí español.
And I am Black American.
Y yo soy afroamericana.
All right.
I've never
Now,
said African American, I don't think, in Spanish. I always just say like morena or Americana, but I have broken down my DNA before. So my ADN in Spanish is ADN. So yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. All right, guys. I think this concludes our How to Learn Spanish as a Foreigner or a Gringo. All right, with Miss Nikki. So now let's move on to other topics. Are we ready? We want to talk about we want to talk about dating Dominican men / Spanish men. All right, I have to end this video here. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned on this series with Miss Nikki, where she goes into details about her Dominican experience, dating Dominican men, the heartbreaks, everything. So please stay tuned. It's quite an interesting story, and she's been very transparent, and I'm sure her story will touch many, and hopefully we'll learn from it. So please, guys, stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next episode of this interview with Miss Nikki, where she talks more about dating Dominican men, her experience, and all those juicy details. All right, guys. Again, thank you for watching. See you in the next video, and God bless.